everybody, and welcome to the aggieTEACH Momentum podcast, brought to you by the aggieTEACH Arts and Sciences program at Texas A&M University. I am your host, Kenrick Davies, former high school physics and astronomy teacher and current program coordinator for aggieTEACH Arts and Sciences. This podcast is meant to provide a little more insight and information to those seeking a secondary content teacher certification in Texas. We aim to provide episodes that help pre-service educators on the path to certification, as well as leverage the experience of myself and other guest speakers to support teachers in their first few years in the classroom. Today's topic is rural, suburban, and urban classrooms, and we have quite a few guest stars in the studio with us today. Please welcome aggieTEACH alumni Sandra Wallace from Houston ISD, Elizabeth Labry from Alvin ISD, and Rebecca Rosamond-Grammer from Coppell ISD. Welcome all of you to our online studio.
Thanks so much for having us.
Hey. Yeah, thanks. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, this should be a real great conversation, and I know we have some time to get everything in. So let's get right into it. So to start off, why don't you give us a short introduction of who you are, what you teach, and where you teach? Sandra, why don't we start with you?
All right. So my name is Sandra Wallace, and I am in Houston ISD, specifically at Beller High School. And this year I'm teaching geometry and AP pre-calculus.
And what's your class year? We got to throw that in there.
Oh, sorry. Fighting Texas Aggie class of 2011.
Awesome. Okay, Rebecca, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, I'm Rebecca Rosamond-Grammer. I'm teaching at Coppell ISD and Coppell High School, and I am teaching honors chemistry and AP chemistry this year, in class of 2020.
Awesome. And Elizabeth.
Hi, I teach at Alvin High School in Alvin ISD. I teach Algebra 1, and I'm also the math instructional coach at that high school, and Fighting Texas Aggie class of 2013.
Awesome. Well, Gig'em, I know this is a great year of Aggie football, so I'm hoping that you're all keeping track of that. Okay, so each of you represent a specific area of focus: rural, suburban, and urban settings. So our first real question is, why did you choose to move to your current school district? And why don't we go small and work our way out? So Elizabeth, I'll start with you in Alvin.
Sure. So why did I choose to move to my current school district? I kind of mentioned it to you guys earlier. I met a guy. I was in Houston ISD, living downtown, and I met a guy. So we moved down here and started raising our family here in the small town of Alvin. So it's kind of definitely has a small town feel here at Alvin. It's gotten bigger from what I've heard, because my husband actually grew up here and went to school in Alvin High School. But now the population is 28,000. It's a 6A school, so not one of those small schools, but definitely still has that small town.
That's great. So you moved from Houston, an urban center, to Alvin ISD. How hard was that transition?
It was kind of rough at first, although when I first met him, I was commuting. Well, we started dating, and then as it got more serious, we moved in together, and I was commuting, and it was awful. It was an hour commute. The commute was rough. It was hard because I was at a fine arts school that had a lot of really great things about it. It's good and bad, but I had an hour and a half planning every day, no duty. I was the only one teaching geometry, so it was rough going from just having a lot of freedom to a more normal kind of public school setting, which I had taught at before. I've taught in the Dallas area, I taught at Pearland, so it wasn't anything new, but just that transition was rough. But being at Alvin High School, it actually made it really nice because it's a great team there, which I can talk more about later when we get to that.
Sure. Awesome. Well, thank you. So we'll move over to Rebecca, who's in Coppell ISD. Correct me if I'm wrong, that's North Dallas, right?
Kind of like right in between Dallas and Fort Worth, in the middle there.
Awesome. So what got you there after you graduated from A&M? What made you go up to that area?
It's really just kind of where my family is at. My family is located about 15 minutes away from here, and I wanted to stay near them, have that support network. And I grew up attending like a similar school, so it was just kind of a familiar setting for me already to make that transition to here.
Right.
And I was lucky enough to do my my student teaching here, so just kind of
awesome.
Smooth transition right into it.
Yeah. So would you say, did you kind of grow up there, and so you kind of knew the area and the class sizes and all of that?
Very much so. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I know that that's really important to many of the students in our program is being able to go to a familiar setting, especially in those first few years, because you kind of already know what's going on. All right, Sandra, that leaves you in our urban center of Houston. So what got you there? Why do you stay there? Give me a little bit of that.
My similar story to Rebecca's, I grew up in Houston, actually attended Bel Air High School, and my family is here. I'm very close to my family, so I knew I wanted to be back here to be close to them. And I loved my experience here as a student, so I figured I'd, give it a go as a teacher. I actually started at a middle school in the district, um, and then transitioned to high school a couple of years in, which I always knew I wanted to do high school. That's just kind of where the job was at the time. And I found that I love it even more as a teacher than I did as a student. So as a teacher, it's nice because I'm not micromanaged to have specific things that I'm supposed to do. Like I have a lot of freedom in what I teach and how I teach it. And I really love my team here. We've got a really close-knit math department, and everyone is very supportive of each other. And we just kind of build each other up. And so that's been one of my favorite things.
That's great. So I've heard it from a couple of areas, and this is interesting that I've heard it from the really big and the really small, not really small, but the smaller, about the team being so great, and one of the reasons why you love what you do. Rebecca, would that be true? I guess in your area as well. Do you enjoy working with your team, and that's kind of one of the reasons why you've stuck around?
Absolutely. Collaboration is incredibly important here, and we are given, a good amount of time during the week to work with our teams and make sure that we are like growing with them and learning from them. And I would absolutely say that's very important here.
It's one of the things that I think we talk about a lot in teacher prep is just this sense of community. Like we know that if you stay in the field, or we know that you will stay in the field a lot longer if you feel like you have a kind of a teacher group or a community that you can rely on. So it's just fantastic to hear it from all levels around the state that we have that as aggieTEACH alumni. Wherever we go, we're kind of building that community or being a part of that community. So that's fantastic. We've kind of already been talking about this, but the next question I have is, tell us what is the best thing about teaching in your particular school, district, area, however you want to take that. Let's go the opposite way. So Sandra, we'll start with you.
Um, so as much as I do love my teams in this pro that we have, this answer was very easy for me. It is absolutely the diversity. Um, Houston itself is an extremely diverse city. So by nature, the district is diverse, and my school specifically is extremely diverse. And I really just love that there are students from all different nationalities and backgrounds that are represented here. And our differences are celebrated, and that's something that I find really cool. We have over, I think, 85 clubs here, and students are encouraged to get involved in any kind of club. And so that helps for, when students are more involved, they tend to uh, do better with their grades and kind of care more about school. And so it's great that we have the option for students, anything that you want to get into, we have it. But specifically on the diversity side, we have this huge celebration at the end of the year. We call it BISA Fest, the Bel Air International Student Association Festival, where we have clubs like the Bollywood Club, Japanese, Arabic, East African Student Association, German, Italian, Jewish student, K-pop, Latino, Hindi, Muslim, Chinese, Greek, South Asian, like all different nationalities
Wow.
that put on performances, and just everyone celebrates each other's cultures. And then afterwards, there's a huge food festival, and it's just it's such a cool thing that I think you don't really get a lot of places to see so many different, like nationalities represented. And I think because there are so many, that our students are very accepting of each other and accepting of each other's differences and willing to learn from each other about other cultures.
That's fantastic. Yeah, just throwing a little bit of my own experience in when I taught in Frisco. The particular school that I was in had a very large Indian population, and the parents for the PTA, like whenever they would do a dinner, lunch, whatever, supporting the teachers event, they would occasionally do Indian food as a way to like bring us closer to their culture. So that was something really, really interesting that I enjoyed about that particular area. All right, Rebecca, same question. What do you enjoy most, or what is the best thing about your particular area?
The first thing that comes to mind here is just kind of like the very supportive community that we have among the like staff and admin together. And also just kind of the sense of how important it is for us to be growing as teachers. We have a lot of really great opportunities for professional development throughout the year that are like teacher-led things. So it's teachers teaching other teachers and just being able to like learn from each other. And just that community here has been really fantastic. And I feel like I've been able to grow a lot in this environment. And so I'm really appreciative of that. I think something special about Coppell as a suburban district is that we also have a pretty great amount of diversity here. I would say certainly nothing like Houston, but that's also been a really great like a learning experience, just getting to know my students from all of these different places around the world that have come here to Coppell because we are an exceptional district in like academics and extracurriculars that we have.
That's fantastic. So again, that teacher community aspect of it, teachers leading teachers, right? I mean, if you also think back to your first year, mentoring, right? I mean, mentoring is the best way to get a teacher to retain into in the school system is to have a decent mentor. So it sounds like in where you are, you have that teacher leading teachers sort of mentality. All right, Elizabeth, back to you in the land of Alvin ISD. What is the best thing about teaching in your area?
Well, specifically at my school, I would say similar to what you guys have mentioned. I just have an amazing team. So, find yourself a team that feels like a family because that's how it feels for the math department. We support each other. We do things outside of work. We go to each other's baby showers. We go to their weddings. We're one big family, but you can find that in any kind of area. I found that, in some other schools I was at too. So for me, the best thing about like this small town Alvin area is the really strong sense of community, not just at our school, but in the actual town of Alvin. And when we do community outreach, a lot of schools they do their volunteering and they have all the different awesome organizations that do community service, but it's a little different here and it's very, very meaningful. The whole community is involved. This town, I don't know what their deal is. They're obsessed with parades. Like we got to have a parade for everything. And shoot, if my kid goes to a parade that is not throwing candy at him, he's gonna say this is not even a real parade. Like they love their parades, man. They got food drives, community pep rallies. Many of the athletic programs we have involve like the elementary schools, and they'll pull those kids in to do cool things like volleyball camp and cheer, and has something called Jacket Day. The list goes on, and what it boils down to is, Alvin High School is one of the oldest. It's one of the oldest schools in Texas. I looked it up the other day. I can't remember how long it's been around. It's very old, and so what I found from my coworkers is that they always come back to Alvin. They have a lot of pride here, and they love their traditions. So us Aggies, we love our traditions. A lot of teachers who graduated from Alvin High School now come back and work here, and so it's really cool to see that kind of community and have that involvement with and you can tell the community, the parents, they're supporting our school.
That's great. So, follow question here. So, when you say a lot of teachers come through Alvin and then come back to Alvin, what do you think that is? Why is it that the teachers want to come back to the place that they went through?
I don't know. Maybe I should ask them. When I graduated, I was like, I don't want to go back and teach at the school I went to. I mean, I know Sandra, you said that was different for you, but for me, I didn't want to go back and teach it where knowing the teachers, like that taught me, and now I'm going to be their peer. But I don't know if it's something about just the small town feel in that sense of pride, and I want to give back to my community. And maybe it's something to do with that. We just they really like it here in Alvin, and I agree with them. I mean, I've only been living in Alvin for I guess 4 years now, and I agree. I feel like I've been here my whole life, and it does feel like that strong connection where we all just even though it's got 20,000 people and, in the population, it's still got that small town feel.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I also taught in Sherman, so north of Dallas, almost Oklahoma, and it kind of had that same sort of a feel to it, like Sherman, especially with the neighboring town Denison. Like there was a rivalry between Sherman and Denison, and that was what ate everyone's time during football season was, who's going to be on top of that. And of course, as an Aggie, I identified with that. But also had quite a few connections to the local community, businesses that would support or donate T-shirts or money for a project. I even got a local power company involved in a project. I got the CEO, who was an Aggie, which was a great connection, to come and judge projects in my physics class. So I felt like that was kind of a really cool connection that I made, probably because I was in a smaller town, not necessarily, as possible, maybe in the realm of possibility for a bigger town. So I love that sense of connection. But I kind of again want to highlight pretty much everyone here, no matter the level, no matter the size of the district, has said that community, that being a part of the school community, the local community, has just been one of the reasons why you stayed there. So it sounds like it really doesn't matter what size of district you go to. You still seek out that community, and if you don't have that community, you either create it or you go someplace else that has that community. So that's fantastic. So we are going to talk a little bit about the other side. So I want to know, what is the biggest challenges in your classroom, school, district area? What is the biggest challenges? I'll start and I'll say the biggest challenge for me in a suburban area was the traffic. I hated the traffic. The commute was terrible. I had 45. So I'm going to throw it to Rebecca. You can tell me that you don't have the same experience. You can tell me something completely different. But what is your challenge in Coppell?
I had to think about this for a while. There's a lot of different aspects to teaching and stuff, but a really big issue that's been growing is like student well-being and their mental health. Coppell has very high expectations and very like academically driven kids here. And so, like, they have tons of pressure on themselves all the time. They have pressure from their families, they have pressure from teachers. And so, balancing their well-being with those high expectations has been very difficult. And just making sure that we're taking care of the whole child and not just the academic child, grades, grades, grades all the time.
Mm-hmm. I completely identify that with Frisco. Has there been anything specific that your school or district has done to try to combat that?
Yeah, there's several clubs about like student-led clubs about like well-being and stuff. And then there's also a new club started this year that's like I think it's actually a class as well called the Hope Squad that's doing a lot of outreach about like suicide prevention and awareness. And then we're also like doing like each semester we have a day in class where we like the teachers teach about suicide awareness and prevention and just making sure that we're putting that at like the forefront of everybody's minds and making sure that that's something really important.
That's great. That's great that the students are involved in that solution too. So that is a large problem, and I would imagine not isolated to your area specifically. I'm sure it spans everyone on the screen, but I'm glad that y'all are actually trying to do something about it. Elizabeth, what about you? What are some of the challenges that you have?
So the first thing that came to my mind was just the socioeconomic status in this rural town. We have our population is 59% Hispanic, um, and then we have a large percentage of our students on that qualify for free or reduced lunch. So it's like something like 60 something percent that's a combined free and reduced lunch. And so just what that means is when you have these families that maybe are struggling, working families, mm, kids that are not in good home life situations, and just generally bilingual homes where, um, you know, calling home is difficult. That parent support can be difficult. Trying to call home and get parents, to reach out to their kids to get them to come to tutorials, to make sure they're, helping their child be successful. That can be difficult, for families that are working all the time or don't speak English. In addition to that, low socioeconomic status is just the access to technology is limited. We're not a one-to-one school. by any means. And yet, the state of Texas has all of their testing online now. So it makes things challenging, pushing all this technology on schools that just don't have the funds to provide that. So that's something that we're kind of always fighting for and working for is, can we get more laptops? But yeah, those are the main things that came to mind.
So a follow-up question on the idea of funds. Do you feel like you have what you need to teach and you would just appreciate more? Or do you feel like you're in a situation where you really are not given the enough tools to really be have the greatest effect in the classroom?
As a math teacher, I can teach with the whiteboard. I can teach with chalkboard. Like I can teach my students what I need to teach them. It's frustrating though, being told, you need to incorporate these, applications or, the stress. I teach Algebra 1, so that's the tested subject in math. So there's a lot of pressure getting these kids to pass the test. That's all online. So therefore, we have to make sure that they're practicing testing online and, doing math and needs to be really pen and paper. So how do we get them to do the math on the paper, but also, answer their questions and do this on an online format? So yes, we can still teach. Can we, would we be more successful if we had that one-to-one? Probably, just because the students would have better practice and more access. Because I can't just, say, you go home and you practice this. Well, a lot of our students don't necessarily have internet or they don't have, a device to have their phone maybe, but sometimes that's not always the same as having their own laptop, right? So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, all right. So I'm going to throw it over to Sandra. So I almost feel like you're going to echo some of the ones that we've already heard, but what are some challenges that you have in Houston ISD?
So probably one of the biggest things that came to mind was just inconsistencies with our budget. Every couple of years there's some big change that happens, and sometimes we get extra funding and sometimes we don't have funding. And so especially the years where we don't have as much are hard. So for example, we haven't had as much funding the past couple of years. So like typically the math department has money that we can allocated funds that we can purchase things for. And one of those is like calculators to be able to replace ones that die. We haven't had that for about 3 years. So I currently don't have enough calculators in my room for the number of students that I have. Along with that, the school itself has had less funding due to the district cutting funds. And so we've cut teacher positions. And so because of that, my class sizes are larger this year than they typically are. Right now, my smallest class is at 32. My largest is at 39. And so I'm guessing y'all are about the same based on your reactions.
My largest is 30. Goodness.
Yeah, I'm sitting at 30 at most of my classes.
Yeah, typically usually the lower level, like I've taught Algebra 1 every year before this, and usually Algebra 1 classes they try to keep around like 25. And then the AP and honors classes will tend to be a bit larger just because you can have more students. There's kind of less, I don't know, disruption and behavioral issues. But yeah, no, they're all fairly large this year. And so, and to be honest, it's not, I don't really have many behavior problems with my kids. But it's just hard when you have students, especially at the lower level, that need more individualized attention. And I can only give you so much attention when there's 33 other kids in the room to give attention to as well. And so, that's hard. We do, the way our schedule is set up, we have tutorials during lunch. And so students, we have a whole hour for lunch, and that's when we do club meetings as well as tutorials. So there's lots of opportunity for students to come in to get more one-on-one time, and they do, but it's still just hard when I've got 175 of them total. So,
Right.
yeah, that's definitely, and honestly, just the time it takes to grade is probably my biggest complaint for large sizes. I don't mind the bodies in the room, but the grading definitely increases when you have more kids.
Yeah, I know we've had questions from our pre-service teachers who are worried about that. Like, how, give us tips and tricks on how to grade. And it's like, well, there's only so much you can do. Just don't spend too much time on it, or just don't assign anything. But that's a different problem. So since two of you have brought up funds, Rebecca, I want to ask you, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, but do you feel like you have the funds necessary? And being the only science teacher here, like I know my background as a science teacher, we need stuff. So, do you feel like you have in Coppell the funds necessary to be able to do the things that you want to do?
Yeah, I actually am like the point person on the budget for the chemistry team. And our budget has definitely decreased every year that I've been here. Our budget just decreased actually last week because something didn't pass. So it's definitely going down over time, but we have not gotten to the point where like we don't have enough to get the like basic necessities yet. So it's trimming the fat and stuff, but we're still getting enough budgetary support to keep things running okay.
That's that's good. And I'd love to point out that when I asked this question about your challenges, and pretty much all of you did not say anything about students. Like, it wasn't about student problems. It wasn't about student behavior. It was really just about school, how the school functions in terms of budgets and in terms of scheduling and things like that. I mean, those are your big challenges. And if those are your biggest challenges, I kind of feel like y'all are doing all right. So I'm hoping that y'all feel like y'all are doing all right, at least. So let's get to our last question here. Okay. So here's your chance. Make a pitch for all of those future Aggie teachers coming into the field. Why should they come to work in your school district? Elizabeth, we'll start with you.
Well, to me, what I've always thought can make or break your happiness, we'll say, at a school, how much you enjoy working there, is the department and the administration. Like you mentioned, kids are kids. I I don't really see that much of a difference between my kids and my relationships with them at different schools. But what makes a big difference to me is having that department that feels like a family, feels like you can support each other and you can grow in your profession. And then also the administration. I've been at other schools where it seems like we have a new principal every year or some new AP. But here at Alvin, because we have that really strong sense of community and the, teachers that work there want to stay there, we have a large percentage of our administrators, 6 of our administrators have worked at Alvin High School as a teacher. So they kind of promote from within instead of assigning, a random principal to our campus, which is not a bad thing. I've had great principals that were assigned that I've never met before. But what, makes it interesting and I think what makes it good here at Alvin High School is that they understand like those unique traditions and just how the school is run. They know where there can be improvement. And they also know, what things run well and what is really important to this school because they've been through it at this school. So they're here to support us. Other campuses I've been at, the admin is, they're doing what the district wants. They're doing what the state wants, which is important, but they don't necessarily support their teachers. I feel really supported here at Alvin High School, and I enjoy going to work every day.
That's a plus. All right, Rebecca, why should they go to Coppell ISD?
I think we're going to have a lot of similar answers here in this and just the sense of community that we have at Coppell High School and those opportunities for growth. I love my team here. They are such great people to work with and just kind of learn from. And then add my admin, like that's going to really make or break what your experience is at that school. I've had the same principal the whole time that I've been here, and she is incredibly loving and caring and supports the teachers and like fights for us against the district essentially and like keeping us getting us what we need and everything. And that's why I've stayed. Like she is why I've stayed at this school, her and my team. And they're just really great people here. And there's also fantastic kids and community here. They're very driven kids. They work hard for what they want, and the parents are very supportive of them. They'll bring them in early, send them home late. they have the resources that they need to like get things done. And that's a kind of a unique to this area as well, is just the great community outside of the school as well.
That's fantastic. Okay, Sandra, you're up. Why should we come work at HISD?
Well, first of all, we would love great teachers to be joining our teams. It's I've talked a lot about my school and about how much I enjoy it here, and I will say I've kind of been on the opposite end of the spectrum from you, Rebecca, that we have had changes to administration and whatnot that disrupted things that were there that had been working really well. And that has been a challenge, but what has been the great thing that has really like helped everybody stick through it is the sense of community that we have within our schools, within our teachers, and especially within our students. I mean, every time I think about, the challenges that I've faced and how frustrating it's been, it all comes back to the kids, that I love the relationships that I formed with them. And really there's just so much that these students can teach you, and just about learning about all of the different life experiences that they've had, because we have the students, kind of on both ends of y'all spectrum. I've got the upper level kids whose parents are there and are supportive and push through, and then I've got the emergent bilingual kids who, I need a translator to talk to them, and so I get to see kind of a mix of everything. And so yeah, we would love for great teachers to come and join us and keep making our teams stronger. And plus, Houston is just a great city to live in. If you have not lived here before or been here before, it's just so Houston itself has a lot to offer. And
well, now I feel like I want to go back to work in all of y'all's districts. So, all right. Well, and that's all the time that we have for today. So thank you, Sandra, Rebecca, Elizabeth, for joining us today and for being just a great voice of our alumni and all of the great Aggie teachers that are out in the field. The aggieTEACH Momentum podcast drops every 2 weeks, so make sure that you are looking for the next episode on Spotify or linked on the aggieTEACH Arts and Sciences website. For more information, you can visit our program website at aggieTEACHartsci.tamu.edu. That's aggieTEACH, ARTSCI.tamu.edu. Thanks and gig 'em.
there you go.
Yeah, good.